All right, I'm on this follow-up from this, I guess this imploding of Harriet. My God, who knew such a movie could create such a divide in the community? I don't want to talk about necessarily the movie, but it's something that came to me from talking to people about the movie, and not talking about the accuracies or the inaccuracies or the boycotting, any of those things, but this is really talking about how to craft a bad guy, a villain, a monster, right? And I think we can all agree, right or wrong, how it's not how they crafted it, but the bad guy in Harriet was a big problem. Okay, so whether it was right or wrong, it was a challenge, right? So I have had that problem in books and in film. Not necessarily that I was writing historical stories, but just what is a bad guy? How do you explain it? You know, in an African context, yeah, sure, you could just make somebody end up doing bad things, but there's always more to it than just the bad things that they're doing. And I don't know if I'm setting it up correct. I'm just going to tell you a little bit of what I was facing in terms of being true to an African consciousness, a black perspective, or more than black perspective, because when you say black, you're really just meaning African American. When, as you say, from an African consciousness, you may say, as best you can do it as a black person, reaching back to more of an African interpretation of things, not so much a Christian interpretation of things. So I don't necessarily believe in absolute bad. We always talk about, where does evil come from? Where does bad come from? And I'm not one of those people that thinks it comes from outer space. I actually believe we make our bad guys, we make our monsters in the way that we treat them in society. I also believe that people can be converted, helped, redeemed. So it's very hard when you feel like that. And I'm just talking about me, right? I'm just talking about me. Do I believe in punishment? Do I believe in killing somebody? Yeah. Oh, Jeff, you talking all that jazz. If somebody, was coming towards you to do you bad, I bet you would kill them. Yeah, of course, I'm trying to protect myself. You understand what I'm saying? And if it's an evil person that doesn't, respond to stimuli, I might have to terminate that person's life. And I believe in terminating that person's life. But do I believe that they are a demon? Do I believe that they are Damien Omen? No. I believe they are demented. I believe they are scorned. I believe they are doing evil things, no doubt. But many African religions don't even have a word for devil. They have deities that do things that we consider bad, no doubt, no doubt. But do they believe in a devil? No. Do I even believe in a devil? No. I don't believe in even a God in the context of Christianity, a third entity in the clouds, and at least in the way modern Christianity is explaining it. So yeah, I believe in the oneness of God. So I believe that our collectiveness, makes up God. This air, this flesh, this water, whatever it is all God. These trees, these bugs, these these animals, these plants, all that's God. So that's God. Let me get that out the way. So when you coming from that context of trying to make a bad guy, because it really shows your hero's strength in them overcoming obstacles and them defeating the quote-unquote bad guy. Now, there's other ways to do it, but that's the real popular way, especially when dealing with American and Western audiences. So how do you do that? And my first monster, I had done, two horror movies. You know, one was Holla If I Kill You, and that was a demented comedian. The second one was Gold Digger Killer, and Gold Digger Killer, I had a girl get raped by some players, and she goes out and tries to rid the world of misogyny. And even in that one, those were not monsters, those were just players. And although rape is probably the most monstrous thing you could do, I didn't really write them in my mind thinking they were monsters. I wrote them in my mind thinking about, people that I know and them doing bad things. And this girl decides to kill them. So she created the ultimate penalty, for them. But I didn't deal with her easy in the movie either. Although I understood and I wrote it with her motivation in my mind, I didn't write it agreeing with her, right? So now I decided in my third movie, it was called The Death Pledge, to write a bad guy, to write a Freddy, to write a Jason, a serial killer. And I didn't want to go so hard into the backstory that it takes away from the present story. So what I did was I interviewed this dude. I tried to figure out where did he come from, what made him who he is, and he ended up being a tormented person. He ended up being a person that was almost innocent victim of how can I say it? Not mistaken identity, but of a lie, and that made it so much easier. And then I was able to move forward, and I was able to kind of have him do bad things, because to me, I understood why he was doing these bad things a lot better, So that was my first one. And in this second one that I did is in my book, Harlem Shake, Escape from Everyworld. And I crafted a James Bond level villain. And I knew approaching this villain that I wanted her to be big, and I wanted her to have a grand scheme. I wanted her to have a Thanos level scheme, at least not necessarily intergalactic Thanos, but something that would devastate the world, right? And dominate and threaten every human being. And I wanted to get into who she was. And I told a little bit of her backstory, as much as the story called for it, because it really was, not something that needed for me to say, okay, she was born with one leg and she hobbled around for the first 6 years of her life. No, it wasn't something that called for that. But in her doing her bad things and revealing herself as a bad person, I was able to provide that backdrop of her history that helped me as a writer, and it allowed the readers to connect with her. And I think that is also one of the challenges of, I don't know if it's white writers and writers in general, but I will say for me as a black writer, it is something that I find myself really thinking about, because I don't understand the Hannibal Lecters as much if I don't understand their history. So just to make them a Hannibal Lecter is not, it's not realistic for me. I want to know his backstory, like the movie The Joker. I want to understand where he came from. Why are they doing what they did? And it's not going, sympathizing with people doesn't, escape you from being scared of them, because I'm gonna tell you right now, we got a lot of people with mental illness in America, and especially little kids, and their mental illness can be very scary, and post-traumatic stress can give you a mental illness. I don't know whether it's called just dementia or warped sense of view or whatever you want to call it, Freddiness, whatever it is, Michael Myersness, but whatever it is, it can be scary because you can't reason with these people, and they're capable of doing the violent things that you have them doing in your story. I think that is vitally crucial. Now, taking it back to Harriet, the movie, I think the problem with the villain in there was that people didn't understand it. They didn't connect. First of all, they didn't even believe it. They had Harriet on such a high pedestal. They didn't want to accept some arbitrary black person out of the blue coming to track her down, even though there's, black people that have done worse than track enslaved Africans down. They've owned slaves, you know what I'm saying? So to me, that's even worse than taking an African back to their kidnapper, actually owning the kidnapped and making them work for you and treating them harshly. That's worse than the black tracker. But I think, people had a difficulty with this black tracker because they didn't understand him. They didn't know who the heck. He just popped up on the screen. And, I'm not going to hate on the film for doing that because I knew from the very beginning that there were people like that. Also knew from the very beginning that Harriet ain't going to die. I already know she lived to 1913. So please, it ain't no big deal. However, you understand? The way they revealed him, people don't understand. They didn't like his name. All of that is in your character building. You understand? So, let this movie be a lesson to you. Now, the white savior and all that other stuff in there, there's ways to avoid that too. But at least with this one particular element, I understand how they went wrong. I understand sort of how to try to avoid it. There's no guarantees. Film is like any other form of art is totally subjective. So some people can understand, like the one I had the biggest problem with was Saw. Some people could understand the villain in Saw, and some people couldn't. I understand V for Vendetta, and I look at him as a vigilante. But some people say they don't understand V for Vendetta. So it is what it is. But the best thing, the main thing you can do is try to accomplish, try to address it. Look at flawed villains like Thanos. People don't believe he had a bad idea. They just think he was too extreme, and he went about it in the wrong way. He should have expanded the universe, made the other half of uninhabitable planets able to handle life and move people from planet to planet without having to kill them. Darth Vader, in the first few Star Wars, you didn't really see him do anything bad. And by the time the new Star Wars came out, people started to doubt how bad he really was. So when they did Rogue One, you saw him finally going crazy, and he's going as bad as Darth Maul and bad as Count Dooku and what's the other one? With the General Grievous, So those guys had eclipsed Darth Vader's badness because they were able to show them doing more badness. But once they got him in Rogue One, they saw him, and that was kind of his last hurrah. But they may do some more stories with Darth Vader because I think they really like that villain. But they really didn't get a chance to show him going full Brightburn because he probably was a Brightburn. You understand? But anyway, I think it's important to get into your villain, tell their backstory, tell their motivation, and just don't believe that evil is just evil because, they killed somebody. People need more than that, or he looks bad, or you say he's bad. No, you got to build up and build a bad character and build a villain because otherwise people are going to backlash. Anyway, talk to you later. Peace. I'm out.